Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about a biography drama film called A Dangerous Method from 2011. Enjoy your viewing. At the beginning of the movie, we meet a woman named Sabina. She is mentally unstable, easily angered, and upset. As a result, in 1904, she was sent to a famous psychiatric hospital in Zurich, Switzerland. Later it turned out that Sabina was diagnosed with a typical case of hysteria and was about to begin treatment under the supervision of a doctor. She was being cared for by a Swiss doctor named Carl Jung. During their first conversation, Dr. Carl is standing next to Sabina and notices that she has difficulty answering questions. She begins to stutter frequently. The next morning, Carl takes Sabina for a walk in the woods. During this walk, he discovers that she has an uncanny ability to predict people's words before they say them. When Sabina is asked about this, she claims that she has an inner angel who communicates with her in German and helps her predict events. Hearing this, Dr. Carl suggests that the girl's talent could be useful for a career in medicine. During the conversation, Sabina throws her coat on the ground, and Dr. Carl asks her to pick it up. He picks up the coat with his cane. Strangely enough, this situation makes Sabina angry, and she rudely asks him to stop. A few days later, Carl learns that Sabina is actually a very intelligent woman with a degree in medicine. Realizing her intelligence and cheerfulness, he gives her the opportunity to help him with his experiments. Sabina cannot believe that she will have to work with such a famous scientist. She agrees without any hesitation. Later, the movie shows us Carl's wife, Emma, who has just given birth to a beautiful baby girl. Excited by this event, Carl visits the maternity ward to see his newborn son. However, he notices that his wife is unhappy because she had hoped to give birth to a male child, but it turned out to be something else entirely. In response, Carl comforts her and tells her not to worry about it. During these events, Carl and Sabina continue their conversation. Mann reveals the main reason for her condition. He explains that Sabina's problems began because her abusive father humiliated her. He often punished the girl with blows and forced her to kiss his hands. This really triggered emotions in Sabina, and she started looking for any form of humiliation. Even the fact that Carl had hit her coat with his cane a little earlier had caused emotions in the girl. After discovering the main problem, Dr. Carl makes an appointment with Dr. Sigmund Freud, a famous Austrian doctor. Carl wants to discuss his patients and determine the most effective way to their recovery. As the doctors enter the conversation, they begin to share their thoughts and analyze each other. This leads to a lengthy discussion that lasts 13 uninterrupted hours. Despite this, the men are not at all tired and decide to meet with each other again very soon. Later, Carl meets Sabina and tells her about his conversation with Dr. Freud. During their conversation, they realize that they have common interests, and the man and the girl become much closer to each other. One day, Dr. Freud has to leave for a business trip, so he writes a letter to Carl asking him to look after a patient named Otto Gross. This is an unbalanced psychoanalyst known for his brilliant mind and his tendency to debauchery. In this letter, the doctor describes in detail everything about the patient, including the strange fact that the patient can bite when he is angry. In order to preserve their friendship, Carl does not hesitate to agree to this. He then attends Otto's session, hoping to use his method of therapeutic conversation to help the patient. During this session, Otto reveals his true nature by bragging about his many mistresses. He also advises Carl to have multiple women. According to Otto, having multiple bed partners helps a man to be fit and healthy, while having only one partner causes headaches. This is a philosophy that is still preached by a certain Dr. Tate. The next day, Sabina actively helps Carl with his research and even tells a few jokes to make the doctor laugh. She has really started to recover from her mental disorder, but Carl's thoughts keep coming back to Otto's words. He begins to realize that he has been staring at Sabina for a long time, yet somehow he manages to keep control of his desires. That evening, Carl has another psychotherapy session with Otto. Otto asks if Carl has ever had a love affair with any of his patients. Carl answers in the negative and asks the same question. Otto responds by telling him that he is manipulating his patients by making them think that their desire not to have a loving relationship with him is a disease. He applies this technique to all the women he meets, and it works almost every time. Otto boasts that he has actually had love affairs with more than 100 women. The next morning, Carl meets Sabina in the park, and they start talking about adult topics. Sabina says that she has no experience in this. This leads her to believe that this could be one of the contributing factors to her feelings of depression and anxiety. Therefore, she would like to have a love experience. The doctor thinks about her words, but hesitates. Sabina takes the initiative and unexpectedly kisses him. She then invites Carl to her home that evening so they can play adult games. Later, during a psychotherapy session, Otto tries to convince Carl to give in to his desires and accept Sabina's proposal. However, Carl is still steadfast in his decision. He doesn't want to cheat on his wife, and he also recognizes the prohibition against having an affair with a patient. Even after hearing this, Otto continues to talk about some of his romantic encounters. Carl's resolve begins to weaken, and eventually he gives in to his desires. Carl can no longer control himself, and he rushes to Sabina's house. There they begin to play adult games. This is how their secret affair begins. As time goes on, they engage in even more vigorous activities, including tying hands and the like. One day, Emma prepares a surprise for Carl. She gives him a boat decorated with red sails. Emma knows that this is exactly what Carl has always wanted. She thinks he is the best man in the world and says he deserves everything he wants. Seeing the love and trust of his wife, Carl realizes that he is cheating on her. As a result, he visits Sabina at her home and confesses that they should end their affair immediately. However, she persuades him to continue their relationship, urging him to punish her in the same way her father did. A few days later, Dr. Freud returns from a business trip and meets with Carl. They talk again about their theories of psychoanalysis. However, they often begin to quarrel, and this leads to tension in their friendship. As the situation begins to escalate, Freud spreads rumors that Carl goes to the home of one of his patients and has affairs with her. However, Carl strongly denies this accusation, claiming that he is simply attentive to the woman. After the meeting ends, Carl realizes that he can no longer hide his relationship with the patient, so he decides to end his secret relationship with Sabina, leaving her disappointed. A few days later, a furious Sabina bursts into Carl's office and accuses him of telling her mother about their affair. She calls him a traitor and an idiot. However, in response, Carl tells her that her mother already knew about their relationship. Someone sent her an anonymous letter, which she received. He told Sabina that he would now treat her only as his patient, not paying attention to their previous relationship. This makes Sabina even angrier, causing her to grab a knife and do something to Carl's face. Later, she writes a letter to Dr. Freud, asking for a meeting to discuss the connection between her and Carl. After reading her letter, Freud writes to Carl to find out the truth, but Carl denies any involvement with Sabina. He says that Sabina is actually trying to ruin his life by spreading false rumors. Because of their friendship, Freud immediately believed Carl and sent Sabina a letter. He wrote to her that he could not meet Sabina at the moment because he was busy with work. Freud also suggests that Sabina and Carl solve their problems without the interference of unnecessary people. Stunned by the circumstances, Sabina once again visits Carl's office. She does so to find out that he is being discharged from the hospital. It turns out that he is traveling to the United States to attend a major conference. Sabina becomes angry and scolds Carl for lying to Freud about their affair. She demands that he write Freud a letter and confess the truth about their relationship. Sabina also reminds Carl that she could have publicly damaged his reputation, but thought it best not to. Hearing all this, Carl finally agrees and sends a letter to his friend. He tells the whole truth in the letter. When Freud reads this letter, he feels betrayed, but not shocked. He writes a letter to Sabina, apologizing and expressing his admiration for the way she handled the conflict. Later, the movie takes us to a few years later. Sabina comes to Carl's house in Switzerland to work on her dissertation together. As they work together, they reminisce about their interesting past, where they made love in various places, such as a bedroom, a psychiatric ward, and even a boat. Finally, they decide to add one more memory to this list. Carl and Sabina start playing adult games again. Afterwards, Sabina tells him that she has decided to leave Zurich after graduation, and she wants to move to Vienna. This makes Carl very worried, and he asks her not to go. But Sabina does not change her mind. 2 more years pass, and Sabina is now a qualified psychiatrist. She finds herself in Vienna. There she met Freud. During their discussion about psychoanalysis, Sabina says that she is on Freud's side, but she also talks about the importance of the work between Freud and Carl for the further development of psychoanalysis. Freud seems to have no interest in reconciling with Carl. They are so far apart that they don't even want to see each other's faces. A year later, Sabina visits Emma at her residence. Sabina is now married to a Russian doctor and is expecting a child. When they start talking, Emma tells her that Carl's mental state is deteriorating. He has been acting strange since he had a fight with Freud. As a result, she asks Sabina to talk to him. The film shows us Carl sitting quietly on the bank of a river. This suggests that he has withdrawn from his research work and is no longer productive. Soon after, Sabina approaches him and starts a conversation. Carl tells her that he has been having terrible dreams that keep him awake. Sometimes he sees that the whole city is completely devastated. Sabina is bored by this conversation, so she quickly changes the subject and tells him that she is returning to Russia with her husband. She then asks Carl about his new mistress. Carl replies that her name is Tony, and she looks a lot like Sabina. He says that Tony reminds him of the good times he had with Sabina. Carl also admits that his love for Sabina has contributed to his personal growth, but he recognizes that there is nothing he can do to change the situation. After this conversation, Sabina gets into her car and leaves town. Meanwhile, Carl is still thinking about his past. If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klonsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.